Hello, my name is Sierra White. I am doing a book review, and the book that I'm doing a book review over is called Segregated Sisterhood with Racism, Policy, and American Feminists. This book was written by Nancy Carraway, and this book was published in 2010. So this book was published about 8 years ago. Um, a little background of Nancy. She got married in California to a man named Neil. Um, she was the first lady of Hawaii, and her husband was a former congressman and governor of Hawaii. She is a feminist, um, political theorist, and she also is a socialist. And there's a little background of her. She once said in an interview that she is interested in writing and filming about what's going on with people, like what happens in people's lives. So this will kind of explain why she wrote about certain things in the book. Because most of the book focused on like two major factors: feminists and racism. Racism and feminists play a major role in this book. Um, she talked about all different factors of feminism and racism and how big of a role they play in our society and in America, pretty much. Um, to first start off, she talked about a little bit of feminism. She broke down a couple of things. She even talked about African American feminism. Like that was interesting because black feminist theory has to deal more of like sexism and class oppression, gender identity. These are some of a few things that African American feminism have just includes just naturally. So she even had a chapter in there that talks about it. She had about a good 4 chapters, if I'm not mistaken, of talking about different things, but she mostly focused on racism and feminism because they both play different factors hand in hand, almost hand in hand. So these two factors segregate us as humans. But she mostly focused on women. So because she was saying all the factors that segregate sisterhood. For example, in one point, she even discussed like how white supremacist segregates white women and African American. She was basically saying how this topic basically shows that how a white woman in power would choose race over sisterhood. Pretty much that meant that they would rather keep the power that they have and just to continue to reign their power than to be equal with the African American woman. They would rather race over sisterhood. They would rather live in segregation than to be a sisterhood if they have to lose their power over it. And unfortunately, that even continues to this day. Like that, you can see watching the news and just looking on TV and all this stuff. This is what happens sometimes naturally. That people don't want to give up that power to be equal to somebody that's lower than them because they don't want to. No one wants to give up that power, especially when you have it for a long time. You don't want to give it up, and that's just the racism part of it. Feminist part is how we both were women, so they're both for women. White and African American both are women, regardless of their race or anything like that. So the fact that they want to segregate, you're both still women, so you're both still not as equal to men, no matter what race you are. You still not equal to men, and this book really discuss all these different roles and factors of that. That's why she was discussing over sisterhood and how it's just segregation in it. And She basically was showing how racism, feminists, and just policies are really are the factors of segregation segregation. And in order to create the sisterhood, we have to find a way to find some solutions to these. You know, because in my opinion, this book really was interesting because she discussed how pretty much what black feminist is. Black feminist is just a thought that it's really just like the thought of sexism and racism binding together, and that's that just I don't know, it just really interesting to me. But the main thing was racism and feminism. And feminist is something that's been going. It's been a movement that's been going on for years and years and years and years. Women's suffrage and African American suffrage is both something that was discussed in this book. So the book was very, very like diverse. It wasn't just talking about one thing over another. It showed how women are oppressed and how African American women are oppressed by the same issues. But instead of being a sisterhood and coming together and trying to fix that, they segregated. And I keep wanting to say we because I felt connected to the book a little bit because I could understand some of the stuff in there that she was just talking about in the book. And because one of the things I talked about was black suffrage, and it's basically was like the right to vote. And you know, women was fighting for that for a long time. Like, you know, the right to vote. We was like one of the last ones to be able to get the right to vote. So it was just really interesting to read about that and to really see another perspective. And the fact that she is a feminist, she really gave more detail on how feminist is through a white woman eyes, because she is a white woman. So to hear and to see her thoughts on feminists in her eyes and her perspective really showed a lot. She even talked about at one point women's liberation. It's just basically the advocacy of women, the liberation of women from equalities and their status in relation to men. Just basic equality between men and women. That's pretty much what she was talking about the whole time, just getting equality with men and women. And men, they have bigger gaps in wages, education, and voting. It's a lot of things, but she was mainly just talking about sisterhood in the whole book. And how all these different factors come together and segregate the sisterhood. And I mean, there's a lot of important points. It was just one part. She was talking about how the economy and the social effects affect the equality of the genders, and there's a lot of factors that she talked about in this book. It's just mostly what her main purpose was to talk about feminism and racism. Yes, it was even in the title, but it's a reason it was the title of the book. That was mostly what she was grasping onto and addressing throughout this whole book. The book is really interesting. It gave a really good perspective on how America treats and thinks of feminism and racism and how it affects women. And Nancy, she says she is a feminist and a socialist and a political theorist. She really gave some really good details, evidence behind everything she was saying in there. And the book is really not that long of a book. It's really about good 4 chapters, but it was a really good book, and I really learned a lot throughout this book. And feminism is really something big that really grasped my attention, and it's real, and it's something that happens in America all the time. So this book review was this book was really good, and yeah, it was just, it talks about the main points of that America deal with, which is racism and feminism. Women of color, just women in general, just are not equal to men, and this book really was a good way to showcase to everyone about these two issues in America. So, and yeah, just this book was good. So.